part 2 with the Dave Jackson just got even juicier because we're talking about mental health and podcasting. Yes, combining the two. Podcasting can get in our heads, can get in our way, but it can also be a lifeline for both us as the host and our listener. So I wanted to pull this part of my interview because I think it's so important to understand that there are so many benefits to podcasting outside just building a big following, building a big bank account, and there truly is this impact side that impacts others and our mental health. So without further ado, let's welcome back the Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting. Welcome to the podcast about podcasting, where you guessed it, we're talking all things podcasting, but not just in the sense of strategy of how to launch, grow, and monetize your show. Of course, you're going to get that, but we're going deep into how podcasting can actually help you build your community, build your confidence, and if you're willing to lean deep into this platform, it can be the ticket to the life of your dreams, because it'll inspire you to go deeper, to get to know yourself. And as we know, success starts from within. If you are ready to stop being a ripple in this world and bust out your tsunami of change you know you were made for, it's podcasting for your soul. I'm your host, Jen Dragonette, so let's dig in. I want to circle back because you mentioned the time frame of getting 22 downloads at a time and how that can be frustrating. But that number keeps coming up in my head. The podcaster that's ready to fade out because they're like, I've been doing this for a while. I can't get past that 22.
First things first.
What do you say to them?
Yeah, for me, again, my background's in teaching. So that's a full class. That is a very full class that has tuned in to listen to you when they could be listening to satellite radio or Netflix or HBO or whatever. They could be watching an old DVD of Murder, She Wrote, whatever it is. There's a lot of stuff they could be doing that they've chose to listen to you, and they could very easily just swipe left or right or whatever, delete, and you're gone. There's no spam in podcasting. So I always hate to hear the phrase, I only have 60 people listening to my show. I'm like, that's 3 classrooms. I'm like, that is half a hallway in my old building. So don't think about that in that. It's, again, comes back to the perception. There is if you just go to Google Images and type in 100 people, and you'll see, it's like, wow, that's the first section of a theater, and you're like, oh, okay. And then type in 500 people and you'll see wow, that many people are listening to me. Just keep that in mind. And that's where you have to know your why. So for me, my why is I love to help people. And so a great strategy to avoid giving up is when you get that, not as much as you wish, but you get somebody who emails you and says, hey, that was a really great episode. Thanks so much. Save that somewhere. Get a folder going in Gmail, because there are days when you're going to start to make your podcast and you're like, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. And you kind of feel like, why am I even doing this? This is such a waste of time. You go to that folder and that person says, hey, this was great. That really helped me. I thought I was the only one going through this. You're like, now that, okay, gas back in the tank. Let's go. Here we go. The one that still blows me away is when I started, I'm not making this up. I had a water heater immediately to the right of me. I could tap on it. I had a flush pipe. So the whole time I'm recording my show, I'm praying nobody's going to flush the toilet. And a furnace was in there. So it was the world's worst recording place. I was constantly waiting for that. And here I am doing this podcast, not sure if anybody's going to listen. Fast forward, 10 years ago, probably something like that. And this guy emailed me. He said, hey, just so you know, my best friend of 20 years died suddenly. I lost my job of 20 years suddenly, and I was pretty sure I had cancer. And I decided that on Halloween, I was going to take my gun and blow my brains out. And I'm like, whoa. And he goes, but I heard your podcast, and I heard you say that sometimes starting a podcast can give you purpose. So I want to let you know I didn't blow my brains out, and I'm really glad I started this podcast, and I kind of credit you for saving my life. And I'm sitting here reading this, almost crying, going, wait, I'm just talking about microphones and stuff. I'm not here to save anybody. So you have no idea the impact you have on people. And what was great about it is at the bottom in his signature, he had his phone number. So I called him on Halloween. And I'm like, dude, I need all the listeners I can get. I can't have my own. And I was bad this year, but every year since then, I've called him on Halloween just to catch up and see what's going on. And we're good friends now. But you never know the impact you're going to have on people. And I was talking, a friend of mine, Ken Blanchard, does a show called Speak Life. And his background is amazing. If we go through the whole list, he's a Black Republican gun safety advocate pastor. So there's a lot of things going on there. Yeah. And so the Speak Life Church is his show. And at the end of it, he says, hey, I just want to remind you, I love you, and there's nothing you can do about that. And because of his kind of military background, he was also, I think, in the FBI or CIA, one of the two, give or take. And consequently, he's got a lot of military people that call him up just needing some help. And he said the one guy was literally like on the ledge. And he goes, I talked him off the ledge. He goes, I was never trained for that. It's amazing the effect you can have on people, especially the more niche you get into, that all of a sudden people are like, oh, I thought I was the only person. There was, it's fun to say, I think it's, I know it ends in spondylitis. It's a disease of your back. And the guy from Motley Crue has it. And there's a show because they call themselves Spondy. That's like their fun because it's spondylitis. And there's a podcast about it. And there's no cure for that disease. But when you find out that you're not the only one who's suffering, that's powerful. And I know we all love to talk about ads and making money. It's not always about ads and making money. There are sometimes that just the power of not feeling alone is priceless.
Oh, yeah. I'm like a little teary because it's like podcasting saved my life. It truly, I wouldn't be here today without podcasting. And so those stories hit so deep. And one of my friends told me that your story, your message is someone else's life preserver. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what that is. And I think, like you said, for those 22 people, you don't know what their story is. You don't know what your story is sharing. And, like I always say, your voice needs a microphone, a legacy microphone.
That's it. And it's weird because there are plenty, like I do one show. It is literally my therapy. It's called Building a Better Dave. And it's just me being weird or wacky or whatever. Like I did one episode about Frosty the Snowman and the fact that maybe Frosty was really a drug dealer, hence the snowman. And was he suicidal? Was he just depressed? Because death by cop, right? He only stopped the moment when, so it's just this Dave being weird thing. There are times when I was talking about that and super like weird, depressing stuff, or how this organization is driving me nuts. I just need to vent. And I'm lucky if I get 80 people that listen to that. I could care less. Not here to make money. Just going to try to make you laugh, cry, think, groan, or educate. And there are some in there that are absolutely boring, but it was just me spewing me into the internet, which is fine unless I turn around and said, now, how can I quit my day job with that? I'm like, nope, that's not a quit your day job show. That's just good old cheap therapy. There is that as well. That's another aspect of podcasting. But what's weird about that show is more than any show I've ever done, I get bugged all the time. Hey, it's been like a month and a half. When's the next Better Dave coming out? I'm like, hey, it's not on a schedule. It's a when Dave feels weird kind of thing. They're like, oh, dude, I love that show. And I'm like, really? So you never know. You might think that, everybody knows this stuff. And you find out later, no, not everybody does know that stuff. So get your voice out there. Like you said, get your legacy going.
Yeah. I'm like, it's all juicy. And I mean, my program is called Podcasting for Your Soul because I teach people. I don't think you even knew that, but like my cure for podfade, my actual mastermind is podcasting for your soul. Cause there's this healing modality that's hidden inside podcasting where you can make big money, but you can also have free therapy.
That's it. Well, and you mentioned, I started my brother's basement. I was in my brother's basement because I'd just gone through a divorce and a bankruptcy. So when I start and all of a sudden I'm doing a show for musicians and I see I have an email with an attachment and I hit play and all of a sudden I hear, hello, Dave, this is Michael Van Laar from Nuremberg, Germany. I wanted to let you know I found your show and I think it's wonderful. And I was like, wait, well, my brother goes, did he say Nuremberg, Germany? And I go, hold on. Hello, Dave. This is Michael. Yeah, he said Germany. He's like, wait, somebody from your show is listening. And hello, Dave. This is Michael. Yeah, he said, yeah. And I was like, whatever flag I hereby plant my flag in podcasting. I can't believe I'm in the middle of Cowtown, Ohio, and some dude in Germany just found my show. So again, that whole I'm not alone kind of thing kicks in. And then the more I did it, you just find people. I remember I went to my first event and I had people come up. And they said, oh, you're Dave Jackson. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, wow, I love your show. And you're like, really? Are you sure? Okay. And then I'm like, what can I do to make it better? They're like, oh, you got to make it longer. And I'm like, really? Because that's a lot of Dave. And they're like, no, it needs to be at least 40 minutes. I'm like, really? Why? And they're like, that's my commute. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll try, but it is. And then I've never had a listener I didn't like. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm at an event. I'm like, oh, everybody be quiet. Here comes Joe. You attract people that, for me, I take podcasting very seriously, but I don't take myself very seriously at all. And so the people that are attracted to my show are also very sarcastic and kind of loose and whatever, that whole 9 yards. So if we have any secret people, the secret, just think of $1 million and we'll fall from it. Well, like attracts like is part of that. And I think that's true because I attract people that are often very much like me.
Oh, and that's again where the magic comes in. Stop over scripting, let yourself be free, but take out the fluff.
That's it. And there are times when I do things that are goofy. Like I just did a weird segment to explain how you shouldn't have a co-host who thinks exactly like you because it's boring. Because it's like, what do you think? And he's like, I think it's great. It's a great show. Okay, great. But like, we need a little competition or something, a different point of view. But I made it into like a fake talk show. And it's me with all this music. And I got done. I was like, man, that's 90 seconds to make a point. I'm like, yeah, it's goofy. And I try to do something occasionally goofy just so my audience kind of goes, that was weird. But on the other hand, I mean, I'm at whatever, 871, I think is now my latest episode. People still talk about episode 400 because I did a whole thing where a morning radio show took over my show. It was Binky and the Wiz. And like the Binky is like this obnoxious David Lee Roth guy. So it's like, hey, everybody, what's going on? And he wants to do like the traffic and the weather on 10s. And the Wiz is this stuttering guy. So he's like, it's like, but it was weird and it was wacky. And I have people like, when are you bringing Binky and the Wiz back? And I'm like, it kills my throat. I can't do that. So, but it threw people a curveball. In that case, it was episode 400 because I was kind of like, hey, I haven't quit yet. So, and then likewise, on episode 500, I try to do like a groundhog thing, like Groundhog Day. Not as entertaining. No, it kind of landed flat. So not everything's going to be a home run, but I swung the bat. Everybody was waiting for Dave to do something weird. And I did, and it was. And like, okay, well, I've got another 99 episodes to come up with something weird that's maybe more entertaining next time.
Ooh, I can't wait. I'm going to be looking out for it then. That's
right. Episode 900 is only 29 weeks away. Oh, that's scary.
Wow.
Now I think about it. Yeah.
That's like this year.
That is this year. So I'll have to, usually I play, people are like, why don't you play your guitar in the podcast? I'm like, because we're here to talk about podcasting. So I usually throw in a little guitar in there. It's just kind of, which is always weird. I always worry about, what if that's somebody's first episode? Like they tune in to hear about, how do I grow my audience? And they've got me calling 911 because I've been locked into a closet by a bunch of, morning DJs. I'm like, they're like, wait, what? I thought this was a podcasting show, but entertaining. So that one worked.
And I think it's going to connect you to the right people.
Yeah. I mean, I've been hired 3 times from my podcast. I got hired at Chancellor University because during my interview, they go, what do you do for a hobby? And I go, oh, I podcast. And they go, you know how to podcast? Because this is 2008, something like that. And so I got hired there because of my podcast. I got hired at the New Media Expo, which at the time was the largest event for YouTubing and podcasting and blogging and things like that. Got hired for that. And then when my teaching job dried up, which happens when you hire a bunch of sales guys that can't sell training, rather than getting rid of the sales guys, they downsized the training department. And I've been podcasting for 10 years. And at the time I was married and I called my now ex-wife and I said, hey, I think I'm going to do the School of Podcasting full time. And she said, no, you're not. And went, okay. And so I called the folks at Libsyn because I'd been a Libsyn fan for years and said, hey, the bad news is I lost my job. The good news is I'm available to work for you. And they knew me for my podcast. So they were like, can you, what are you doing the rest of the day? And I go, laundry, maybe? And so 20 minutes later, I'm talking to the president of Libsyn and was hired shortly thereafter. So I've been hired 3 times because it's kind of a digital resume. If you're trying to put yourself out as an expert, I've been asked to speak in Australia, in all sorts of fun places. I didn't get to go, but there was some place way east, insert some sort of Chinese, Japanese, Korean, that whole area over there. I forget where it was. Radio Days, something. And due to COVID and that whole 9 yards, I couldn't go. But, it's amazing. You're like, wait, you want me to do what? Oh, okay. I can do that. So it's fun.
Yeah. You just shared with us so many ways that podcasting can impact your life and other people's life. I'm so grateful for this conversation, but I have to know if you could add your special ingredients to the cure for podfade, what would those ingredients be?
Oh, easy. I just did an episode on this. A calendar, Todoist, Evernote. That's the three things. Because when your inbox comes in, you look at it and you go, okay, is this something I need to remember? Okay, put it in Evernote. Okay, is this something I want to do later? Put it in to-do list. Ooh, is this something I need to schedule? Put it in your calendar. And by doing that, instead of your brain going, okay, don't forget, you got to get milk, pick up Susie at soccer, you want to email so-and-so, and don't forget to do this. Your brain can't remember all that. It's like when you have too many tabs open and your computer goes, because it can't remember all that stuff. Write it down, get it out, and then your brain is free to, okay, now I'm going to work on that one thing. I'm just going to pile through it. So that's the cure, I think, for overwhelm, at least in terms of that. And then what happens is those weeks and you go, I have no idea what I'm going to talk about in my podcast this week. And then you go to Evernote or whatever you're using, OneNote or Notion or whatever, and you go, oh, I totally forgot about this. And you're not freaked out anymore. So those are my 3 free tools to help you not get overwhelmed.
Oh, and I will definitely put the overwhelm episode, and I think there were 2 separate episodes, right? Or was it all one?
No, the last one was just, it kind of had 2 sections. One was what is overwhelm, and then the second part was here's a strategy and some tools that I just gave you to overcome it.
Yeah, so we'll add those to the show notes and all of the greatness. And I want to know, is there anything that you want to leave a podcaster with? Like that one statement that's like, this will go with you forever.
Ooh, that's a hard one to answer. For those who have money, there's therapy. For the rest of us, there's podcasting. I used to say that on my musician podcast. I used to say, for the rest of us, there's music. But you know what? There's podcasting too. And just, again, nobody's going to punch you in the face. The worst thing that's going to happen, I always say this, you're either going to have a great podcast or a great story about the time you started a podcast. Either one's good.